having just the full autonomy to make decisions that we know are right really just makes it's so much easier getting through the day.
Right, because ultimately what you have to remember, and what I tell myself, is the financial uncertainty is temporary, but being able to make the decisions that matter is forever.
Welcome to The Dive, the official podcast of Wavestream Media. I'm Mark.
And I'm Cee Cee. We're the founders of Wavestream, and this is where we slow down, talk it out, and dive into the stuff that deserves a little more airtime.
One topic, one story, or one person per episode. Whether it's something we're building, something we're questioning, or something we just can't stop thinking about.
Let's dive in.
Well, welcome back, Cee Cee. It's been a pretty hot one around here.
Yeah, it sure freaking has. You can say that again.
So the last episode, we talked a little bit about the origin story of Mark and Cee Cee.
Yes.
And you ended it with a pretty poignant note. You said that we spent that episode kind of talking about the last 5 or 6 years, and that this episode was going to be about the last 5 or 6 months.
Yeah, well, a lot has happened in the last 5 or 6 months, obviously. So, I mean, it could probably be several episodes, but we'll try to do our best to condense it into just this one.
Right.
We spent a lot of time talking about everything already, but have no fear, we can talk about it again.
Yeah. I mean, if one thing I've realized kind of recently is that I'm kind of a yapper. Like, I never thought of myself as like super social or anything like that, but like,
you are a secret yapper. You wouldn't expect it, and you even wouldn't expect it, you personally, but you are.
Certainly not. But
I think I'm a little bit more overt with mine. I think everybody knows that I can talk to anyone all the time about whatever.
I mean, it's one of the things I like about you.
Oh, thanks, Mark. Stop. I'm blushing. But yeah, it's been a crazy couple of months. So I think last episode, we talked a lot about the startup that we were working for. And, I was employee number 1 other than the CEO, and you were employee number 2. And we spent the last couple of years really building that. And that was really empowering. Like, I think we talked about how we got to really set the standard for how a lot of things were done. And that helped us also set standards for ourselves and how we believe things need to be done in order to be the best that they can be and how we work. And so, of course, when we found out, let's go before the past couple of 6 months, just before Thanksgiving, that company that we had helped build was going to be acquired, it was exciting in some ways because it was like, wow, like, we really helped make this into something that somebody wants. Like, that was really kind of a cool thing. And then it's also kind of like, okay, but like, what does this mean for what my life and my day-to-day is going to look like?
Right. And I think one of the things about the job that I had at that startup that I liked so much is, like, I think if I was going to make a job in a lab that just had everything that I wanted, it would have been that job. Like, there are not a whole lot of jobs out there for like audio specialists. And so we really got to like make one from the ground up. It was a perfect balance too of like autonomy, but also just like checks and balances to make sure that work was getting done properly and to a high standard. The other thing too, thinking about that particular moment, is it was certainly a shock. But one thing that I learned in the sort of intervening years while working on all these business podcasts is that, I mean, my experience of like working in restaurants and being close to like restaurants my whole life is that not all businesses just open forever or like, close within 6 months. A lot of them just kind of run this path where they're open for a while and they get bought or sold. So It's maybe not as shocking as like I might have thought 5 or 6 years ago, or like, I guess 4 years ago when I first got that job. But it definitely like it felt like heavy at the time.
It did. Yeah. I think it's just there's a lot of people, particularly for us. It was past the time where a lot of our friends who had graduated when we did, they'd already left their first job and were on to their second job at a different place or their third one. And we had stuck around because we had built these positions for ourselves that we really loved. And so we did. I mean, we had built personal relationships too with other people that we were working with that felt really strong. So, we stayed around for a reason. And you're kind of like, well, what is going to change? Like all of these things that I really appreciated about this. Is this going to be different? Spoiler alert. It was. It was very different.
Yeah. And I didn't really think that it was going to be very different just from the get-go. I kind of just assumed it was like, okay, well, we're going to they bought the company for a reason, and that is
Right.
because we're, making money and delivering a high quality product. And I sort of just thought that it would be the same thing that we've always been doing, except, a little bit more structured, you know,
More support,
more
hopefully, too.
support,
Yeah.
maybe like a smaller annual raise in like exchange for like benefits, health insurance, those sorts of things, the
Yeah.
corporate stuff, right?
Right. Yeah. The big business, we'd finally made it into big business. And it was not that. I think the transition, as we've discussed in the past, the transition was just not very smooth. It was kind of like, okay, guys, on Saturday you're fired, on Sunday you're hired. We'll see ya. And that was just kind of like, well, wait, what? Doesn't there have to be something else that has to happen in between here? But no, we get there. I think the first thing we talked about was insurance, which I'm not going to lie, I had a little bit of a twinkle in my eye too. I love insurance, and my accountant sure would love to not have to watch all of that money disappear from my marketplace insurance
Yeah, I mean,
that I owe taxes on.
it's just a fact that, the American healthcare system is like inherently tied to your job, whether or not it's
Mm-hmm.
a good thing or the right thing, it's just what it is. Right. And so, that, and like, I'm in my 30s, I don't have real money saved away for retirement. I've got a rainy day fund in case my car breaks down again, or,
Right, which
maybe
our car problems are like an entirely, we should have a whole episode on that, and perhaps we will.
we really should. Like, my family has had like a long time curse with just awful car troubles that I think we're starting to move out of, but, knock on wood.
I fear you've passed them to me, but moving
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. There's a lot that I would do to just immediately be in a position where I had health insurance
Right.
and, a 401k and money going into it all the time. Like, stability is something that I, frankly, have had for a lot of the last several years because of, our previous employer. And to move from that into a more stable position was really appealing to me.
Same. I love when things are stable, which is funny to hear from two founders of a new business.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot up in the air for us currently, but I also feel more stable now, just in the sense of like, there's not any more questioning because we're just
Right.
making the call. Like, if we need to make a decision about what is the format for our own podcast, or, hey, what do we need to do to sort of, boost the numbers on this, that, or the other, we just do it.
Right.
We look at the resources and we make an informed decision, and it's not a lot of back and forth or the bureaucracy of things that
Yeah.
I don't think that was really how things were, but there was certainly a problem with communication that I think is ultimately like the biggest crux of the issue that
I
I
think
think you
so
and I
too.
had in our old situation. And that comes from a lot of things. You talked about how the transition kind of felt weird in itself. And I think that there was simply a miscommunication about, who was going to guide us through the process.
I don't think there was anyone at a certain point. I think that
Right.
there just wasn't anybody to do that. It felt very much here you are, good luck. We need you to do this. We won't give you how or when or where or why, but good
Yeah.
luck. And if it's not done, then we're going to be asking where it is.
Yeah. I think that the miscommunication to me comes from, I think that people just kind of assumed that somebody else was going to do it.
I think
And
so too.
all you have to do is, have an email and say, hey, has so and so done this, or hey, who's going to do this? And then eventually it just gets solved.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need, like, I think that I work pretty well autonomously, but I need to know like what the chain of command is, where to go about this specific question or this specific question. I think that there's a lot more to transitioning businesses than just signing on the dotted line and
Mm-hmm.
making sure that everybody's cool with their benefits. I think that there's a lot to be said about, a change in structure, because if we like structure, we want to know how the structure is set up.
Yeah, and I think ultimately when you do a job like this, everybody loves structure. Anybody who's doing this kind of job loves structure. Everything has a process and an order that things have to happen in. So I think innately to be in this industry, you have to enjoy a sense of structure. So when you take a handful of people and take all of the structure away, they start to think, well, what the heck, man? What
Yeah,
am I
and I
supposed
mean,
to do?
look, I mean, we talked about how this is one of our first jobs after getting out of college,
Hmm.
but we can look at our past experiences just to see that structure in a media company is paramount.
Oh, yeah.
Like Carolina Connect, the structure was very clearly laid out. There was a set system of revision and editing and deadlines.
There were
And
clear people who were responsible for specific pieces of each thing. Yeah.
and expectations were crystal clear. There was never
And
any
they were very
question
high.
about when your stuff was due and to what standard it needed to be done.
Yes, agree. And I think one of the things that was said to me at one point towards the end, where eventually um I had a meeting and I was just like, hey guys, like I'm not gonna stick around for very much longer. Like I want to make sure that these certain projects are taken care of because I care about making sure that people get the benefit of what they bargained for, certainly. But I can't stick around for very long. And one of the questions that they asked was, do you not like working at a bigger company? And I think to a degree, probably. But then they were like, well, you've never worked at a bigger company? And I was like, I've actually worked at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, which is the biggest of the big companies. There's so many people and literal bureaucracy in the way of things there. And I had a very pleasant time at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill compared to this situation, which is the company's still relatively small. I wouldn't call 30 people an enterprise big business, but
No, I think
um,
that's by definition a mid-sized company.
well, you would know that. You've listened to probably more business podcasts than I do.
And I don't necessarily, I've worked at restaurants most of my life. So I've worked in small businesses, maybe some mid-sized businesses, but I do have some experience in corporate. I worked at Vail Resorts in Colorado for about a year. And it was, certainly different. And it did sort of give me expectations about what to expect when I go and work at a bigger company. I expect that the person who hired me isn't going to be working like with me. I expect the division of labor and bureaucracy to be pretty clearly laid out. And
Mm-hmm.
then I also expect teams to kind of do their own thing, but, still within the confines of the larger company. Like I worked at two different restaurants in Vail Resorts, and it was obviously still the same sort of experience that I was expecting in a kitchen where there's a certain level of flexibility. But again, still communication being probably the most important skill next to not burning yourself or not
Yeah,
cutting yourself.
for
And,
sure.
and then also like
I've seen the
very
bear. I know.
right. Just an aside here, for people who may be questioning, I think that that's probably the best portrayal of like actual kitchen
Mm-hmm.
life compared to like a lot of other media. Also, go play Overcooked. If you haven't played that video game, it's very much like what it's like being in a kitchen.
Noted.
All that is to say is that there was a clear structure and clear expectations set from the top that made it very clear like what my role in the team was. I think that there was some of that, but I also think that it comes down again to communication just on the sort of more macro and micro scale. Like, I don't think that it's enough to just, set expectations one time. I think that you need to, when you're kind of getting onboarded into a new company, I think that there needs to be a bit of like a period of time to, set aside some time to help people understand what it's like to be at this particular company. But,
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing too is it's the company that acquired us didn't really understand how our business worked.
That is putting it very kindly. I mean, put it plainly, they truly had no clue what we did. Like, they had no clue. They knew we make podcasts, but how a podcast is made, they had no idea. And they unfortunately made it pretty clear through their actions at the beginning that they didn't really care to learn either. In fact, wanted to change around everything completely and for some mysterious efficiency that they said was going to happen. So they wanted to make me a project manager, which, while I do love to be organized, that's nothing that I've ever done nor wanted to do. And they wanted to make you edit video, which ironically you are doing at Wavestream.
That ended up being like a sticking point for sure. And to give the listener a little bit of context, I went to school and like learned video editing while I was at Carolina. It was the thing that I was doing more of before I realized that I think I'm better at editing audio.
Mm-hmm.
But for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been editing audio exclusively. And so it's not just like I can pick up and start editing video immediately. And I told that pretty clearly. It's like, hey, you know, it's not like fully a use it or lose it skill, but like it's going to take me like real tangible time. And it's not like I'm getting less work put on my plate to learn how to do this.
I'm already behind, and now you want me to try to relearn something like where it's not even like I also learned audio and video editing in school, though I also have not used it to the extent that I had learned at a certain time in many a year. But it not only does your kind of skill fade, your memory of that fades a little bit. Also, the software changes.
Absolutely.
Like leading style for video changes, and like you have to learn how to do all of that while you also relearn. So it's not a short process to figure out.
Oh, absolutely not. And I think the things that have, you know, I've reacclimated well enough, but I'm seeing some of the things that, like, if I was in like a higher stress situation, that would be just absolutely killing my efficiency. You know, the key bindings, like I'm going in between Premiere Pro and Adobe Audition to edit. And anytime I'm going in between these two softwares, it's like relearning a whole new language almost. Like I'm trying to do something that works in one and I can't do it with the same hotkey in another. And
which
like
that's an Adobe problem too. That's something that they should adjust, but that's a whole different podcast as well.
Sure. And you know, I would love to talk about audio and video editing. It's actually pretty fun, but it is difficult work. And I'm seeing now that you know, it's not like it takes me the same amount of time to edit a video podcast as it would have taken me to edit an audio podcast. Like I was editing 4 or 5 podcasts a day before.
Which is crazy work.
Yeah. I mean, you know, if they were short, that was probably like my maximum. I think probably a more realistic is like 2 to 3 episodes a day, but even that's still like a lot.
A
lot. Know, these are 45 minutes to like an hour 15 a lot of the time. I was able to work that efficiently because I was working in my zone of genius. And, you know, we had a dedicated video editor who was able to take edited audio and like perfectly sync it and make really compelling dynamic videos. He was able to do that multiple times a day because that was his zone of genius as well.
Right. And then also you can lean on the other people on the team too, who could make sure you had everything that you needed for one thing or another. Cause like I knew as soon as I handed things off to you all, it was going to be done and it was going to be done right. And it was going to be handed back to me. You know, like I think we worked like a well-oiled machine.
And that's something that I think is lost in translation a lot of the time. Like when a business is acquiring a company, you're doing it because you think that you can make it better. Usually, like you're either doing it to have like a steady source of income, or you're doing it to take something that's great and make it better. Mm-hmm. And one thing I think that is, you know, commonplace in a lot of startup businesses is that everybody is kind of doing everything. Like I'm honestly like surprised that we had such an efficient structure where everybody was working in very specialized roles at our old company. And then we go to get acquired to scale. And then we end up losing that where we are instead becoming the other way. Exactly. Like we had like a really good system in place for making content, again, high quality and at volume. And to an earlier point of yours, it seemed like there was an attempt to sort of restructure and reorganize to scale, where I think that it was already in a position to scale. It was just more a
Mm-hmm.
matter of like, we need to get another or more teams structured like this in order to scale this up, as opposed to let's restructure this team to see how far they can push themselves.
Agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all that's sort of frustrating because I am not a businessman.
Well, you are now.
Yeah,
We're business people now.
first time entrepreneur over here, spitting facts. I learned them on a podcast, y'all.
Right.
But, I think that from the get-go, we realized that things were maybe not to our liking. Obviously, a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about kind of unfolded, more than just in the first week or two.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of had a bad feeling just from some of the way that the onboarding went and some of the paperwork we read. And so we didn't really feel comfortable being on there full time because it seemed like we were either going to end up in a bad situation or, things just we might end up regretting it at a certain point.
Yeah.
And so we signed on as independent contractors, which was a good situation for us. But when you sign on as ICs in a situation like this, it's only a matter of time before you're replaced by
Right.
full-time employees. And that's ultimately what happened.
Yes.
I don't blame them for that at all. I think that's the smart thing to do. And also just, you need to have permanent people in place if you're going to scale, which they want to do.
I think so too. And I wish that I could have done a little bit more to try to help set up whoever followed me. I did find out in a text message on my week off that it was my last 2 weeks notice. So that wasn't an ideal situation. But ultimately, I think that it was probably what was best for everybody. Of the things that I learned there, I learned that the way that you treat people is really important to me. The way that you treat your clients, your coworkers, your boss, your mailman, your whoever is really important to me. And that wasn't necessarily being reflected in the environment that I was in. And that actually really took an emotional toll on me throughout that time. Like, I found myself very incredibly stressed out, like 99% of the time, because I struggled with how there were a lot of forced relationships that were just very clearly not genuine. And I don't know. It bothered me. And it bothered me so much that actually 5 days after my last day, my Apple Watch told me your heart rate has decreased by 8 BPM in the last 5 days. Like, it was physically causing me harm. So I think it was awesome. Like, I thank them for the experience because I learned a lot of things, even if it didn't work out the way that I had hoped at the beginning.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And, I'm super grateful. Much the same. I definitely learned a lot about just like transitions in life, a little bit about transitions in business. Obviously, super grateful for the startup we were working at before. I think that, like I said in our previous episode, I may not have been an expert in audio 4 or 5 years ago when I joined on, but I mean, I left that company exactly that. Somebody who can confidently make decisions in the field. And, when I'm talking about editing podcasts, I'm not like, is this right? It's like, this is right.
It's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's right because I say so. And I'm a genius. And my name is Mark. And I know everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Incredible.
That's exactly how it goes.
That's exactly how it goes every time.
Yeah. I will say the other thing I was grateful for was the fact that for the first time since I got my first job, I was unemployed. And that was kind of really pleasant because I don't think I've ever not had anything to do.
Yeah. Fun employment is a bit of a meme right now.
It was awesome. It was really fun for the 2 weeks that it existed, but
yeah. And, certainly there's folks out there who have other experiences, but when you have money, being unemployed for a short amount of time is usually a nice refresh, a nice reset. Good time to catch your breath.
Yeah, it was. It was, I think, a moment where I realized, like, okay, like you were talking about, maybe structure and stability isn't the most important thing all the time. Like, if structure and stability comes at a cost of other things in your life, then being unemployed for a minute is the best thing ever.
Right. You know, I didn't have quite as dramatic of a experience with my Fitbit, or what do I have?
App-
I've got the
Apple Watch.
Garmin.
You
Yeah.
have a Garmin?
Yeah, the Garmin Vivo Active 4. I
Nice.
like this one a lot. It's pretty cheap. I don't have to pay for the software or nothing. So let me
Yeah.
ask you this, because this is something that I feel some kind of way about. Do you ever like Buzz Lightyear to Star Command, like send text messages like this with your watch?
Yes, for
Whoa.
sure. And I answer the phone on here a lot because fun fact, the whole reason that I wear this is because I never know where my phone is, like ever. And I would not respond to anybody if I did not have this alert me to somebody trying to contact me because I don't know. I throw it down somewhere and I forget that it exists. So I leave it in the car for hours at a time. I like it's
Oh,
really
that's
not with
brutal.
me. Yeah.
Getting back to it all, I do think that our former employer was also pretty grateful for us too, because one thing, despite all of the problems that I think we had, I think that we were still able to deliver on our end and still create high quality content. In the sense too, I think the most important thing that I was thinking about through all of it is, I mean, like this shouldn't be the client's problem. So like I was
That's
really
I
working so hard to make sure that the trains were running on time and that podcasts were still coming up in the exact same way that they were expecting them to.
that's I think the thing that was the most challenging for me is this situation that I have found myself in isn't necessarily my fault. It's certainly not the client's fault. I don't know whose fault it is, but they shouldn't be experiencing. I don't want to give them anything less than what my best is because they don't deserve it. And I think that was also a large source of the stress as well.
Totally agree. Totally
It's
agree.
tough when you feel like you are so good at something because I'm going to be honest, guys. I'm a really great producer. I'm going to say it. I am. I'm really good at this.
Yeah,
And it's tough when you're really good at something and you know exactly how it needs to be done. And there's just a brick wall in your way for doing the things that you know need to happen. It's like, I don't know, tying somebody's arms behind their back and being like, okay, like, good luck, you know? It's just a tough that I think was the most stressful thing, obviously, because I'm getting worked up about it.
well, you know, I think maybe that's a good opportunity for us to transition. You know, we've been talking about like the last 6 months. Let's talk about like the
Yeah.
last 6 or 8 weeks, you know, and
Yes.
talk a little bit about starting the business.
Yeah, it's been exciting. So, Wavestream Media, it was actually born in February when we became independent contractors. So, that me and my mom actually came up with the name. We were sitting and thinking, like, what sounds cool and
Hmm.
peaceful, but also like audio and also like, you know, I just fun and cool and interesting and can make good branding, you know? So,
Yeah. And to clarify, like all of us who were independent contractors made LLCs
yeah.
so that we could try and like figure out how to, you know, get, you know, a favorable tax situation as such. Um,
Yes.
but, you know, a little later on, you know, we were spitballing just the idea of like, you know, we probably could just like go and do our own thing, like if the worst
Mhm.
came to worst. And it was
It
the sort of
actually
thing.
was born at a bar at like midnight.
Yeah, as
Let's
all
be
great
honest
ideas
with them.
do. Yeah, we were
Yeah,
eating some nachos, drinking some White Claws, having a good time.
exactly. And we were like, wait, what if we just did this by ourselves? And
Yeah,
then here we are.
it's so funny to think about that because like we weren't like sloshed or anything. We were just at the
No.
bar having a couple drinks, and it's the sort of thing where we maybe had like talked about it once or twice before then, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I just don't think so. I've said this a million times. Like before, I did not want to be a business owner at all. I always had said that I just want to be able to shut off at the end of the day, but I ended up realizing that I am stressed all the time about work anyway, and I just
Mm-hmm.
don't shut off at the end of the day anyway. And so I might as well, you know, reap the benefits of living like a lifestyle where I am, you know, very invested in my work.
Right. And a lifestyle where you're in charge of your work too.
I think,
There's something to be said for that.
I think too, it was really important because, you know, we talked about it there and I started to like really warm up to the idea, but after that, it really kind of just dawned on me just like how complementary our skill sets are.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have said that I'm somebody who really enjoys structure and organization. Those are two skills that I'm not very good at in terms of just
You
like
just like them.
making it helps me work so well and it makes me feel so comfortable and confident. But
Yes.
like, I am not a very well organized person. Maybe it's this, maybe it's just like yapping. Maybe it's something that I've gotten better at
Yeah,
over
I'd
the
say
course
you're
of my
pretty
life.
organized. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
But
you work within organization very well.
But I think that at the end of the day, when I was thinking about like our time together, working together, I never had to ask you for anything because you were just on top of it. I
Thank you.
felt like you were somebody who knew how to do not just the bare minimum, but like efficient organization. And, you know, to echo something you said earlier, I mean, you're like a fantastic producer. You're able to
Thank you.
make great podcasts for things that I have like, look, I think neither of us know or knew that much about birthing persons and maternal and infant health. But I mean, through like your work on those podcasts and like the research that has gone into making questions and getting guests, like you have, I don't want to say that you're like an expert to devalue like doctors or anything, but you're kind
Right.
of like an expert. And like,
Yeah.
this is
And making the
something
content at least.
you have that expertise in developing a strong foundation of knowledge in so many fields and you're
Thank
able
you.
to apply that organization to that and create something amazing every time.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I mean, similarly, I also don't ever have to ask you for anything. I know once I hand something off to you and I say, this is what we need, this is what it needs to sound like, pick something, have fun, go, then it comes back exactly as it's supposed to sound. So I agree. I think that we work really well together. And I think we've learned even on the business side that you and I have complementary skills. I think that funny enough, in that land, I have more kind of visionary ideas, and you have a little bit more of the okay, but how are we going to do that? And you made some really big spreadsheets.
Yeah, a couple hours at YouTube University and all of a sudden I know how Google Sheets works. It's pretty cool. I have so many spreadsheets now. I've got a content planning spreadsheet for my own podcast. I've got our own financial spreadsheet which does math for us. It's
Mm-hmm.
amazing.
Yes. Ironically, it does math for us, and I still don't quite understand what's happening. That's kind of makes sense for me. But yeah, I mean, and the last 2 months, I would say, have really been spent on like, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Like, what's it look like? Figuring out all of those kinds of details. And that's been, I think, the most exciting because we we learned from our experience at the startup, and then we learned from our experience at the acquiring company, like what was important to us as people and us as people in business. And we were able to figure out who we wanted to be and what we wanted to sound like. And I love coming up with new branding for things. So, it's just been really exciting to kind of figure out what our voice is and being able to say, like, okay, this is us now.
Yeah, I am super excited about all of the branding. I think the website looks really cool. I'm excited
Thanks.
about our podcast because I think that you and we don't need an excuse to yap, but it's nice to have one. And it's
It
also
is.
nice to just do something different. Like, I think that there are plenty of people who, make podcasts as a way to show off their skills and their expertise. I know we help people do it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But to take all that stuff that we learn there and apply it here is just such a fun time. I think the other
Mm-hmm.
thing
And
too is
test
it's
stuff too. But
yeah,
that's a different
exactly.
thing
I
too.
mean, if we're going to like try something brand new, why not test it out here instead of on somebody's podcast that they're paying us to
Right.
do?
Yeah.
The other thing too is, I mean, I think just to kind of double click on like what you were saying about what we value in business, like I think the thing that really stands out to me the most is just like the people that we work with. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
so important to just like really be connected to these people. in a
I
way.
think authenticity is the word that comes up for me, like when I think about
Yeah.
that. And like also the way that I like to dumb down authenticity is like just being normal. Like just be a normal person, be your normal self and connect with people on a level that is like them as a person. Whether they could be your client or anybody else, I feel like you should be able to connect with them in the same way, you know?
Yeah, we live in such a weird time where it's so easy to just sort of craft a new identity for yourself,
Yeah.
online
I'm
and
gonna come back
elsewhere.
next week, a whole different person with different. I'm gonna get a wig.
We should do that'd be fun.
We should. Anyway, to the point, yeah, authenticity and like valuing connections with people, and then I think I cut you off.
Well, I mean, it's just that, I think that it's important to be in that kind of a relationship with the people you're working with, both, just, on a client, on a client level, and then just also like on a, business level, like kind of what you and I have. But I think the other thing with that is that just makes it so, and I think authenticity to this point as well is it's like you're able to, tell the truth. You're able to kind of get to the core of like what somebody wants and what somebody wants to make. And like, I'm not in the business of making something that's not what, is something just totally counter to what you had in mind. Like, we are in the business of, turning vision into reality and,
Yeah,
making the imaginary manifest. And so what we have
yeah,
to do is really kind of get at what it is that we're, what is the vision? And you're not going to do that being fake.
no, and I think the other point there is trust too. Like you have to build a certain level of trust with somebody when they're coming to you with the idea that they have, and they want you to make it into what they have in their head. Like they also have to be able to trust you that you will listen to them and take what they have said and what they've shared with you and actually turn that into something that they can hear or watch or something like that. And if you don't trust, if I can't trust you to listen to the things that I relay to you, and you can't trust me to give you like that information, and the client can't trust us to, like that is so, it's so important. But it all comes from like showing people who you are, like who you really are, and allowing them to build that relationship to trust you. So
100%. Couldn't agree more.
thank you. Yeah, those are my insightful thoughts. To your other point, though, that's less insightful, I am excited to be on a podcast again because I would host the podcast that the startup had every once in a while. That style of podcast is not necessarily my wheelhouse. Like, it was a podcast about podcasting. And while I do know a lot about that, obviously, that style is not necessarily my thing. The other podcast that I'd had in the past that was relatively successful was kind of like this one, actually, where we would each come in with, there'd be a theme. We'd each come in with 3 things we wanted to say based on the theme. And then we would just kind of go for an hour. And I think I'm better with less restraint.
Yeah, I mean, to take people behind the curtain here, we just kind of have like a couple bullet points. Basically, like,
Mm-hmm.
what are the main talking points? And we've just been kind of going free flow at it for, I guess, what is now about 40 minutes.
Yeah,
Uh,
the last bullet point though does say et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, whatever. So I don't know if that
oh, I mean, I think
counts.
we're hitting that right on the head.
Yeah. Check.
Yeah, I'm enjoying this podcast too because I am currently host of another podcast, but I've got 2 other co-hosts as well, who are certainly experts in the field we talk about. But it's like, it is so different to have a conversation with you who kind of understands like what we do as a host to kind of keep the conversation moving forward and
Mm-hmm.
really talk in like an interactive and dynamic way. So it just makes the conversation flow in like such a more natural way as opposed to 3 people trying to talk over one another.
Yeah, it can get like that for sure. Like when you have more than one, like a host and more than one guest, or like if once you got 3 people, everybody's got something to say. And it's hard to like fit everything in. And then somebody's like, back to your old point, which I even do that with 2 people. So like
Right.
Don't put a third person in here with me, which is funny
Yeah.
because we will have guests eventually. But
And, I think that 3 to 4 people is like a fine way to do podcasts. I think that there are opportunities to make really dynamic content like that.
mm-hmm.
But I think once you get above 4 people, it's just a mess.
Yeah, it's hard to know who's talking. That I think is the biggest thing. Like, it's
Hmm.
hard for the people to find time to talk. And then if you're the listener, you're like, who even are you? There's too many people here because I can't see you. So, like, I am only able to go off of what you sound like, which fortunately for us, too, I think it's great that our voices, well, it's actually terrible. Our voices are so similar. People aren't going
Right.
to know who's talking.
Oh, no.
Oh, man. This is Cee Cee, just so you know. But ultimately, I'd say to sum up the last couple of months is it was honestly a really good learning experience. I am really excited, and if you're listening to this right now, then everybody knows. Not everybody knows what's going on yet. So if you're listening now, then everybody knows. And it's really
Secrets out.
fun when it's a secret. Yeah. And that I was also a little bit scared to start my own business. Like, I had my stepdad has his own business at one point. My dad in my childhood had his own business. My mom's had her own business. Like, I've been surrounded by people who have had their own businesses, but for some reason I was like, I can't do that. Like, I have too much self-doubt. I've learned. Like, I'm like, oh, I can't figure all of that out. I can. And then, my other motto is how hard can it be? Boys do it, which I learned from TikTok a couple years ago, but it's true. It's like, I know people who have their own business who are, bless them, maybe not always the smartest at all times ever, which me neither, but like, if they can do it, I can figure it out. And it has also been empowering in that sense.
Absolutely. The phrase fake it till you make it comes from somewhere, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
anybody can learn how to excel and do something that they never thought they could do. You just kind of have to put in the work. And I think, like I mentioned in our previous episode, we've learned so much about how businesses run and operate just in sort of a macro sense from the work that we've done on business podcasts over the last
Yeah.
several years, that we're in such a unique position to really just kind of hit the ground running. Like we didn't have to spend, months trying to figure out like, how are we going to structure things financially? Where do we like, how are we going to get money to start off? Like we didn't have to go through a long drawn out process to kind of build the foundation of our business because we already knew what needed to be there.
Yeah.
And so it, to your point, it has been like such a refreshing experience just because there is a degree of uncertainty just because, what I think our vision for the business and where we are now aren't quite, lined up. Obviously, like we don't have like we're at the start. We've got a couple clients. We really want to be able to support ourselves and our families and our loved ones,
Mm-hmm.
fully with this. And it's going to take us a little while to get there. And sure, that creates uncertainty. Financial uncertainty is, one of the more common stress points in, I think, a lot of people's lives.
Right.
But to trade that for the certainty of just the smaller things, just being 100% under control and having just the full autonomy to make decisions that we know are right, really just makes it's so much easier getting through the day.
Right. Because ultimately, what you have to remember, and what I tell myself, is the financial uncertainty is temporary, but being able to make the decisions that matter is forever. So it's
Right.
worth it.
And it's called building a business for a reason. It starts out, you have to get it brick by brick, but once it's there, I mean, it's going to be there until,
We decide it's not.
until the business exits or it just kind of naturally shuts down. Like, everything comes to an end, but this gravy train ain't coming to an end anytime soon. We're just getting started here at Wavestream Media.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. And we're very excited. Now that you know, say hi, tell your friends, come hang out with us. We would love to help you make something great.
Yeah, I would love to yap about podcasts or honestly, pretty much anything. So let's make it happen. And then I guess just last thing is, we'll tease out the next episode a little bit. So next week, we're going to talk a little bit about how we've applied some of our expertise and how we, it's not all just business podcasts we worked on. Cee Cee and I have our own projects that have done really well. And so we're going to talk about that and, try and learn a little something about how to make something great.
Yeah, how to go viral a little bit and what happens after you do. So it'll be fun. I'm excited I do love talking about us. I'm excited to talk about us in a different capacity, and maybe a less serious capacity.
Yeah, I mean, real talk, it's, I really like being able to dive into all these different things, but
wow, that's crazy. You just said the name of the podcast.
Yeah, it's fun to dive into our work lives, but I feel like I've been drowning in my work life, so it'll be fun to come up for some air and then, head back underwater for some more fun with, a little bit of lighter topics.
Yes, you will definitely learn next week. That is because the story that I have to tell is stupid, but it's going to be good. So we'll see you then.
That's it for this dive. Thanks for being here. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at wavestream.media. And if you want a podcast like this one, or totally not like this one, visit our website, wavestream.media. Talk again soon.